Hello and welcome to the spoiler-containing review of the movie Gladiator 2. So, if you haven't seen the movie and you want to see the movie, do not watch this video. It will contain spoilers of the movie Gladiator 2. If you want to see the spoiler-free review, I made a video about it as well. You can watch the spoiler-free review. It is the previous uploaded video before this one. So, yeah, you can watch review now with spoilers and without spoilers. So let's start without much ado. Let's get into the details of the movie Gladiator 2. What I liked, what I didn't like so much. Because in the review from yesterday, the spoiler-free review, I gave a general outline. What I liked about the movie, what I didn't like so much. And now we can get into more specific reasons, specific scenes, specific characters that I liked, that I didn't like so much, and why this affected my perception of the movie as a whole. So, you know, the movie starts with this epic battle scene, you know, this giant naval battle where a city is attacked in Numidia, okay, like the Romans attack with a huge fleet. They attack the city in Numidia, and our main character, Hanno, or that's what he calls himself. Of course, he is, as we will later find out, not Hanno. Yeah, he's established as the main character, and of course we immediately can guess that he's the kid from Gladiator 1. Yeah, right, he's the kid from Gladiator 1, Lucius Verus, and that will have some implications about which we're going to talk, but he's like established as the main character. And then you see his wife, and his wife is like, wow, this is like, I have the impression they just put in his wife to create this, I don't know, motivation for him, but it feels strange because we see her like for, how long do we see his wife? For like 1 minute, for like 30 seconds or what, like, oh, she's here and, hello, my wife, and they have like one short scene together, and then basically the city is attacked by this Roman fleet, and of course the evil Roman oppressors, a bit of like, yeah, evil Romans, of course, we Roman boos know that it's not true. Anyways, the Romans attack, and there's fighting going on, and of course his wife happens to be like an archer, which is let's say, interesting choice from nowadays perspective, but back then it would have been extremely unusual. Let's put it like this. It would have been very unusual, very atypical, okay? Like this idea that women were fighting, you know, wow, they could do amazing stuff. Yeah, that is a modern idea, and that hasn't been the case back then. I'm sorry to break it to you, but you know, just because nowadays, you know, we have equal rights, and we know that, you know, women can also do impressive things, Hollywood assumes that was always the case. But I hate to break it to you, like, this would have been extremely frowned upon, okay? This would have been like, hey, it's like, that's strange. It's like, what are you doing here? You know, like, that's weird what you're doing, okay? I'm actually like kind of surprised that they didn't show like female legionaries, like Roman legionaries, or like you know, kind of like a female legion. That's maybe in okay, that is reserved for Gladiator 3 maybe. Then we get the female legion, and then this whole historical revisionism where we have to like, oh, just because now we have equal rights as men and women, it must have always been the case, right? So it is strange, and we see her like for 1 minute, and then she's dead. And then he's like, oh God, no, of course, wow, he's super sad, of course, but we as viewers, we don't feel it so much because we have seen her like for 1 minute. You know, it doesn't feel emotionally impactful for us. When we see this, we're thinking like, okay, yeah, I mean, of course, it's understandable that you're extremely sad now, but we don't feel it so much because we have seen her for not long, you know? So her whole character is a bit strange, and it just serves like she's just put in there in order to make him feel angry about the Romans. Because, of course, the general who was leading this attack on the city, General Acatius, I think he's called in the movie, played by Pedro Pascal, he's like, oh, I hate this guy now. Like our main character, Hanno, aka Lucius Verus, son of Marcus, okay, more to that, but son of Lucilla, a grandson of Marcus Aurelius. He's angry. He's like, oh, I hate this guy now. I hate Acatius. I will kill you, Acatius, because you killed my wife. You know, and so, you know, I found this a bit strange. And, you know, the whole beginning was a bit weird. The battle, what? I mean, when did the Romans attack Numidia in 211 AD? Like, Numidia had been a province of Rome at this point for hundreds of years. I mean, and then later on, I mean, okay, he's captured. Yeah, the battle doesn't go well, the Romans win. And we see Acatius actually has a bad conscience. He's like, oh man, this is not what Rome stands for, you know, like, I don't like being the bad guy and killing innocent people in the name of Rome. So it's at least interesting to have like a conflicting character with Acatius. And then, you know, our main character gets taken as a prisoner. Yeah, he's becoming a slave now. The usual stuff, like as in Gladiator 1. He becomes a slave, and then he lands at some weird backwater city, of course, and he has to fight now in an arena. Basically, almost a carbon copy of Gladiator 1, except, as I said in my spoiler-free review, kind of like a worse and more unrealistic version with like over-the-top explosions, and everything is like, wow, huge ships that explode. I mean, it's completely over the top and absolutely non-believable. And he gets thrown into an arena together with Jugurtha. I'm not kidding. Jugurtha, the leader of the Numidians, who lived when was the war of Jugurtha against the Romans? 100 BC, 120 BC, 110 BC, around that time. So over 300 years before the events of the movie. Over 300 years before. I mean, that's completely ahistorical. And so our main character fights then side by side with Jugurtha in an arena, okay? In an arena against some weird ape creatures that I wouldn't even call. It's hard to call them real existing creatures that live on this planet. They seriously look like some sort of genetic experiment gone wrong, where someone tried to create a killer creature by mixing DNA from apes or chimpanzees with, you know, wolves or dogs, and then make them, I don't know, give them like brutally sharp teeth and everything, and then make them super aggressive. And you're like, what the I mean, am I watching a historical movie here, or is this a fantasy movie? Sorry, but that is like completely, for me, it was completely immersion breaking and believability breaking. Because if you establish this as a movie that took place in the Roman Empire, then you cannot put in fantasy creatures. And I'm sorry, but this is what this was. Like, these creatures, to me, looked like some sort of genetic experiment gone wrong. These aren't normal apes. These are not normal apes. These are like insane killer apes, mutated killer apes. And this is completely breaking the world building, in my opinion, the believability of this world. I mean, it was already strained before, the believability of this world, with like insane explosions and over the top, the battle scene, like in the establishing of the movie, the first 10-15 minutes with this sea battle, or this naval siege of a city, you know, like semi-siege, a semi-naval battle, siege of a city and city fighting scenes. It was completely over the top, but now with these killer apes, I'm sorry, but that is just stupid. Like mutated killer apes, come on. There are plenty of insane animals on this planet. They are really dangerous. And the first movie, you saw tigers, you saw lions, and it was enough. Like, Maximus had really trouble dealing with these creatures, okay? They are insane enough. We don't need to invent mutated half dog, half ape killer things, okay? We don't need to invent such creatures because this planet has plenty of dangerous creatures. Anyways, that was already like really annoying, and already at this point I was like, okay, this movie is going to be a disaster. Like, the naval battle, I didn't like it. It was too exaggerated. It was completely ahistorical. This took place hundreds of years before the events of this movie. The wife of the guy, of the main character, was just like put in so that he's angry at the Romans. She didn't serve any other purpose. The scenes where he's in kind of like the afterlife, he sees scenes from the afterlife, kind of like mirroring what Maximus saw in the first movie, you know, when Maximus's family was killed and he saw them on the wheat fields of Elysium, you know, like in the afterlife. It's mirroring that, in my opinion. It's like mirroring it but worse, okay? Mirroring it but worse. And the music, it didn't vibe with me. The music of the film, the soundtrack, it didn't vibe with me. It didn't have a strong score. That's like one of my main gripes with the movie. It didn't have a strong soundtrack. There was like I'm pretty sure Hans Zimmer wasn't involved because probably he was too busy with Dune, which has an amazing soundtrack, by the way. And so like all we hear every time when they show scenes from the first movie, from Gladiator 1, then every time they play the theme from Gladiator 1, the famous melodies from Gladiator 1. But Gladiator 2 has no theme that I know of its own. I couldn't, if you would ask me now, please whistle the melody of a theme or a song from Gladiator 2, I have no idea. I couldn't tell you. But the ones from the first movie are very memorable. We remember them even after more than 20 years. That's how memorable the melodies from Gladiator 1 were. But Gladiator 2 is completely missing this part, which for me was a huge letdown. So, you know, for me this was the low point, this mutated ape scene in the arena, like, oh god, this is going to be a disaster. This is going to be a catastrophe of a film. And then, let me think what happens afterwards. Yeah, I mean, of course, our hero defeats the apes because he's the powerful hero, you know. And then he comes to Rome. He meets Macrinus, who has like the guy who's played by Denzel Washington, and basically Macrinus is impressed, of course, by our hero's capabilities, by Hanno's capabilities, and he's like, yeah, I will make you my main gladiator, but you have to be obedient, you know, you have to fight for me. And then they go together to Rome, okay? They go together to Rome because why? Because the two emperors that are currently reigning, Caracalla and Geta, they make huge games. They make celebratory games because why? Because of the epic victory of Rome against the Numidians that have been conquered already 320 years before the events of this movie, you know? So whereas the first movie still was kind of like in a historically accurate context, because there was the Marcomannic Wars in the first movie that really took place, okay, in the same time period, the second movie, like, oh, you know what, I don't care about history or historical accuracy anymore. Let's just put in something like Africa, or there were the Numidians. Okay, let's put in the Numidians, like 300 years. I'm actually surprised that they didn't put in Carthage, like the Third Punic War and the destruction of Carthage. Like, that would have been freaking hilarious. But it's not so far off actually time-wise, where Carthage was destroyed by Rome, okay? That wouldn't have been time-wise so far off from when Jugurtha was defeated. And Jugurtha, by the way, dies, of course. And yeah, I don't know why they had to put in Jugurtha. It was really strange. So our hero arrives at Rome, and of course, immediately you have like more gladiator fights, you know, even more over-the-top gladiator scenes where our hero has to now fight in the Colosseum. And by the way Rome is established, I didn't like it so much. I didn't like it so much. The city in the first movie was, in my opinion, portrayed better, even though it was also not historically accurate. They didn't use a historically accurate model of Rome, in my opinion, but the grandeur of Rome, of the city, was established, in my opinion, better in the first movie. And in this movie is like, oh, here's Rome, by the way. And okay, visually it looks very nicely done. I cannot complain about the visuals, but it's like they should have made an epic intro when they arrive at Rome. They should have like in the first movie, like when they arrive at Rome, when they show Rome for the first time, you hear like this melody and like the camera goes through the clouds and like, wow, Rome, look at this. It's impressive. Look at how beautiful it is. Look how amazing and impressive the city is, you know? And here it's like, oh, by the way, we're in Rome now. Whatever, man, we're in Rome now. And they just show a city scene from Rome. It's not as impactful. I didn't like it so much. So at least then, my impression was after the first third of the movie, it starts getting better. Like we now start getting into like these political intrigues where our main protagonist still is fighting in the arena. So that plot hasn't developed so much yet, but we start seeing like his, you know, childhood, why he was sent away by his mother Lucilla, okay? Lucilla had to protect him. She sent him away into exile because he was the heir of Rome, which I personally don't understand. It doesn't make a lot of sense because wasn't it like, hey, Commodus had been defeated and the whole point of the first movie was that Maximus gave his life in order to restore Rome and to defeat Commodus, to end tyranny. And so tyranny should have been over now, and now Rome is being restored to its true self, as the Emperor Marcus Aurelius used to say in the first movie. Give back Rome its own true self. Make it a republic again. Make it for the people again. Right? And so I don't understand then like, oh no, Commodus is dead, but yeah, you're still in a lot of danger. I have to send you away to Africa. Hey, that's still within the boundaries of the Roman Empire. You know that, right? Although, of course, in this weird timeline where Numidia hasn't been yet conquered for whatever reason, maybe it's like not part of the Roman Empire yet, even though in reality it was by 211 AD part of the Roman Empire. Anyway, it's weird and ahistorical. It does make a lot of sense. But what I like then is like we get more backdrop of the characters. We get more backdrop like the story of like the childhood of Hanno, who is Lucius Verus. So I will call him Lucius Verus now. We understand, we see Lucilla, we see that Acatius is actually the husband of Lucilla, and he comes back from the campaign against the Numidians and says like, oh man, I don't like this. I don't feel that I'm like fighting for a just cause. I'm feeling like I'm the bad guy. I'm killing innocent people. I don't want this anymore. And then like we get into the what I would call better parts of the movie where like they establish this plot, you know, this plan to overthrow the two tyrannical emperors, Caracalla and Geta. Okay, we get into this plot where our general Acatius says like, okay, we have to overthrow them. They are brutal and tyrannical, and we have to restore we have to restore the law of the people and give power back to the Senate. And so we learn that Acacius has stationed an army, 5,000 men strong, outside of Rome, somewhere, you know, not far from Rome. And he wants to then call upon his army, and they plan this plot to overthrow the two emperors after a few days in the middle of the games, surprising them. But I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense, because why didn't he enter with his army in the first place when he came back from the Africa campaign? It's like, oh, now he suddenly understands, like, whoa, these guys are actually not so friendly. I now understand it, you know. Suddenly he realizes that Caracalla and Geta are not so friendly. And there's a scene between Caracalla and Geta and Acacius when he returns from the Africa campaign, and it's like, it's kind of interestingly done, I have to say, but of course exaggerated. The two emperors are depicted as evil and a bit psychopathic, of course, and our poor general, he's like trying to, you know, serve them well and serve the Roman people and win wars, win battles for Rome, and those two psychopathic emperors are still ungrateful and kind of like threatening him and so on. And so afterwards he's realizing, oh wow, these two guys are actually not so friendly, they are really bad, so maybe I should really overthrow them, you know. Like, why didn't you realize this before? Like, were they unfriendly psychopaths only since yesterday, and before that really friendly guys? Or it doesn't make a lot of sense if you think about it. But anyways, at least I would say the plot gets more interesting, because the first third of the movie was like, I didn't find it interesting. I was like, okay, this is going to be a disaster. And at least now with the political intrigue, it gets more interesting, and we get to know, okay, we see Lucilla as well, and she talks more about, you know, we understand why she had to send away Lucius and all these things, you know. And so I would say it starts getting more interesting with the political intrigue, and like, okay, wow, so he's overthrowing the two emperors, how will this exactly work? So meanwhile, our main protagonist, Lucius Verus, who, by the way, I find the least memorable of probably all the characters in the movie. I'm sorry to say this. I'm not sure if it's only me, but like, I find Lucilla more interesting, I find Acacius more interesting, I find Macrinus more interesting, the guy played by Denzel Washington, and I even find the two emperors like Caracalla and Geta more interesting, even they are completely ahistorical and completely exaggerated. By the way, the Caracalla and Geta, they weren't like this in reality, of course, so it's completely invented and made up stuff. But basically I found many characters more interesting than our main protagonist, which I guess is not so good. I guess it's not the best sign when you find every other character more interesting. Yeah, anyways, then we get more fighting scenes in the arena, and now we have the first meeting between Lucilla. She finds out that, oh, she sees this guy fighting in the arena, and he said, like, there's an interesting other subplot going on, how she finds out that it's actually her son. He fights against someone, and then he recounts a poem which she remembers from his childhood, from Lucius's childhood, and like, oh shit, this is Lucius. And also how he moves in the arena, and he does a thing where he takes dirt in his hand like Maximus used to do, and she's like, oh, this has to be my son. And then she meets with Lucius, but he's still super angry at her, of course, that she sent him away, and he's really angry and so on, you know. And then the plot evolves further, and I was like, wow, this is actually starting to get interesting now. The movie is starting to get more interesting. Maybe we have like a nice political, you know, intrigue going on. Sorry, I have to drink. And maybe we see like the overthrow of like 2 emperors and the installment of a new one. But then it gets a bit more insane. And that's where I feel that the second third of the movie, so around the middle, is the strongest part of the movie, in my opinion. I'm like, oh wow, this is actually not so bad. This is interesting, okay? Like, we have some fascinating plot lines going on. We understand now, at least, even though it doesn't make any sense in reality, but at least in the universe of this movie, we understand now the motivations of the different characters. Okay, we understand like Acatius, the conflicted general. Lucilla, the mother who had to send away her son to protect him, and she has a bad conscience. The son himself, Lucius, who hates the Romans and who hates Acatius, like, they killed my wife and he killed my wife, I hate him, I will kill him. And Macrinus, the gladiator, like the guy played by Denzel Washington, like the leader of the gladiator school, okay? And it's kind of, that's the part where I liked the movie. I was like, okay, if this continues, then I will look past the first third of the movie, which I didn't like so much, but I think I could still like this movie. And it had some nice, nostalgia going on. They often showed Maximus scenes from Gladiator 1, and every time like they play the music from Gladiator 1, which is like super memorable and amazing. And you have like nostalgia and so I kind of liked it back then in around the half of the movie. And then, in my opinion, it starts going berserk. The movie starts going full... The movie suddenly starts going full crazy. And I'm not sure what Ridley thought, like, everyone has to be like a complete psychopath. Everything has to go completely crazy. I have to top the first movie. Maybe he thought like he has to top the first movie. Like, oh man, I'm 86, 87 years old now. I have to show that I still have it. Like, we need more action. We need more crazy characters. We need more insane stuff happening. We need more psychopaths. We need more, plot lines and intrigues and it gets too much. It gets kind of like not believable anymore, because suddenly the Macrinus character, who until then was like this leader of the gladiator school, like, he goes completely crazy. Like, this guy suddenly, without a motivation that we understand so much, he goes batshit crazy. He's like, ugh! He's like, oh, I hate Rome. I will destroy Rome. I will destroy Rome. I hate Rome. He says this. Then we kind of understand it later what his motivation is, but he's like, we learn that he wants to he's like trying to play the strings of everyone and wants to like take power over the Roman Empire for himself, right? And so basically he's starting to manipulate people. He's starting to manipulate Caracalla and Geta, and this goes so far that it culminates in a scene. Okay, wait. First, I have to go a bit before, because he's the guy actually who learns also about Lucius's identity, because of course he's smart and he hears what others are saying, and he has like informants within Roman society, and he basically threatens one of his senator friends, threatens him, and this guy is involved in the plot. In the plot to overthrow the 2 emperors, and Macrinus finds it out, and he immediately goes to the 2 emperors and tells them everything. And then like Acatius and Lucilla are brought to the 2 emperors. They are outraged, brutally, like, they are brutally outraged. How could you betray us? And like, as a punishment, then they throw Acatius into an arena, and Acatius then has to actually fight against Lucius. And first, of course, they fight against each other, wow, and it's a crazy fight. And then That was actually a nice scene where like Acacius tells Lucius about his like motivations and that he didn't want all this, you know, he's actually the good guy. He didn't want to attack Numidia, and he wanted to overthrow the two emperors, and he loves his mother and so on. But then he's killed, he's being shot by the Praetorian Guard, and yeah, so this is the end of his character. But I thought this was at least kind of a good character, like Acacius was at least a consistent character. But Macrinus now gets becomes more and more crazy, and I think this is kind of like, this is like not believable, because you have established this character in a certain way, and now suddenly he flips. He's going completely crazy, and it's not understandable for me. Really, it's not well explained or well established why. So, anyways, Macrinus goes crazy, and the plot is, you know, destroyed to overthrow the two emperors. But instead, he convinces Caracalla to murder Geta, and actually, they murder Geta in a really brutal scene. In an exaggeratedly violent scene, in my opinion. It didn't have to be, in my opinion, you know, but that's probably, unfortunately, the trend these days, that everything needs to be more violent, whatever. Thank you so much, Game of Thrones, for making brutal violence mainstream. Anyways, so Geta, he together with Caracalla, he actually like, he takes the knife into his hand, and with Caracalla together brutally murders Geta. And at least that's like historically somewhat a parallel to what happened, because Caracalla actually really murdered Geta. But that is probably the only thing where we could say there's a historical parallel, because Caracalla and Geta of the movie are absolutely different from how Caracalla and Geta were probably in real life. Like, if you look at the bust of how Caracalla looked, he was strong. He was a strong, stern character. He had a beard. He was manly looking, okay? He was a tough guy. Caracalla was a tough guy. Look at his bust. This is like a Chad, okay? Almost like a Giga Chad bust. This was not like an effeminate idiot who was like, you know? This was a really strong character, Caracalla. And there are even busts of Geta, so they weren't as the movie depicts them. Like, anyways, so yeah, Geta gets murdered, and then it gets more and more out of hand, and then we have a sea battle, of course, because we have to up the game, right? We have to have more explosions and more insane stuff. We have a sea battle in the Colosseum. So the Colosseum is being flooded, and then we have like the reenactment of a sea battle, which actually there is evidence that this really happened once. It was pretty early after the Colosseum was built, I think during the reign of the Emperor Titus, if I'm not mistaken. That this actually really happened. So this was at least kind of interesting that something like that actually really did took place. But of course, it was super exaggerated, because of course a sea battle is not enough, but it has to be filled with sharks, okay? Like, they have to put in killer sharks, because the killer apes weren't enough, yeah, right? The mutated killer apes weren't enough. Let's put in killer sharks. And it was like, oh God, why? Why do you have to exaggerate it every single time? Like, at least I'm thankful that it wasn't like mutated killer sharks that are like half shark, half, I don't know, bizarre the octopus creature or whatever, you know? At least something. At least, hey, wow, killer sharks, great white sharks or whatever. I mean, it would be interesting to see how the Romans brought those sharks to the Colosseum, but that's probably something else, okay? Anyways, complete, again, kind of belief breaking that you have like these killer sharks, but that's a common theme of the movie, that belief, like immersion breaking or world building breaking things happen. And so there's this battle, and of course our Lucius Verus character again wins because he's immortal, he's invincible. And Macrinus meanwhile goes completely crazy. He kills Geta, and then later he goes even more crazy. I mean, he convinces Caracalla to make him consul, but only second consul after Caracalla's ape. Like, Caracalla has a pet, okay? Caracalla has a small, like, monkey, a small monkey, whom he likes very much. He holds him as some sort of pet, okay? Some sort of pet. And Macrinus manages to convince Caracalla, after he has already convinced Caracalla to murder Geta, convinces Caracalla, who obviously has some mental issues. He's crazy. He has some mental illness, which is like, we see like he's like a bit the crazy guy, and Geta was more, even though Geta was already over the top, but Geta out of the two was the more reasonable one. And he convinces Caracalla to make him consul. And he's now, after the monkey, the second consul. So he now suddenly has a lot of power, because Caracalla is like this insane guy who doesn't care about politics at all. He doesn't care about politics at all. He only wants to drink wine and play with his monkey and, I don't know, engage in debauchery or whatever. But he's not interested in politics. He says like, Macrinus, you do everything. And Macrinus now is becoming more and more powerful. And then, as if that wasn't enough, Macrinus goes completely batshit crazy. Like, I don't know, man, this guy, how he flips from a kind of semi-believable leader of a gladiator school to like this complete psychopath who just kills everyone in a gruesome way, and wants to destroy Rome and wants to have power over Rome in order to destroy it, because he hates Rome. He freaking hates Rome, okay? And then he kills Caracalla. Macrinus kills Caracalla, completely insane. And then basically things go completely crazy, and he wants to kill everyone. And then he also wants to like, murder Lucilla, the mother. The mother of, if I remember it correctly, maybe I don't remember it, but Lucilla then has to be executed. Maybe it was one of the last commands of Caracalla before Macrinus actually murders Caracalla. And, it's completely over the top. And of course, Lucius and Lucilla, they have met again. And then, Lucius, he's not so brutal anymore towards Lucilla, and then they kind of like, he forgives her, okay, like, I forgive you and everything fine again, and then he learns that he's actually the son of Maximus, okay? He was all along not the son of Lucius Verus, the first husband of Lucilla, but actually he's the son of Maximus, which explains why he's this amazing gladiator and why he can fight so well. And this is, in my opinion, retconning. I would say this is, they retconned the story of the first movie a bit, in my opinion, because I'm not aware that this was anywhere implied that Lucius was the son of Maximus. Like, they established this connection between Lucius and Maximus, which was not really present in the first movie, in my opinion. Was not really, I mean, you could maybe say it could have been, but I think they kind of like rewrote the story to make Lucius be Maximus's son. Because this was absolutely not implied at all in the first movie. So anyways, so Lucilla gives now the ring of Maximus, the heirloom of the imperial family, to Lucius, and Lucius gives it to his personal doctor, who's also like more of the likable or interesting characters in this movie, and gives him to his personal doctor, and the doctor then rides to the legionary camp outside of Rome and gives it to this commander, to this general, who was a loyal servant of Acatius, and basically shows like the heir of Marcus Aurelius is alive, the heir to the throne of the empire is alive and calls upon help, you know, to restore the Roman Empire, to end the tyranny of now this Macrinus guy who has managed to like ascend the ladder and get control of the Roman Empire and the Roman Empire's army. Not the entire army, but of the Praetorian Guard. And the Praetorian Guard in Rome is of course this force which is actually historically at least somewhat accurate, that you had the Praetorian Guard in Rome and they were like soldiers stationed in the city of Rome at any time, a few thousand of them. They even had their own training camp or like military barracks, was called the Castra Praetoria, in Rome, which was like pretty large actually, where the Praetorians were stationed. And Macrinus then takes over control of the Praetorians, and then Lucius now through this heirloom has basically control of these 5,000 legionaries stationed outside of Rome. And then like Macrinus rides outside of the city and with his Praetorian Guard, and Lucius kind of like rides after him. And I don't know, I don't remember how exactly this played out, but Lucius somehow manages to break free, and there's a rebellion in Rome and the people rise up against the tyranny, you know. And so he rides after Macrinus, and then there's like a fight between Macrinus, who has gone completely crazy. He's like gone completely mental, a complete psychopath basically, who has like killed a lot of people. And then Lucius fights against Macrinus, and big surprise, Lucius wins of course, and Macrinus is killed. Okay, Macrinus is killed. And then basically Lucius wins, he holds an epic speech. Lucilla meanwhile unfortunately has been murdered at some time before in the Colosseum, like she has been executed. And basically now Lucius should give back Rome its true self, and the movie ends like, oh yeah, now Lucius is basically the new emperor and gives back Rome its true self and restores the Republic. Okay, but I mean, we know as fans of Roman history that in 211 AD the Republic was not restored. I'm really sorry, and Caracalla actually reigned longer than until 211. I think he reigned until 217, and then afterwards, you know, not long later in the 230s, the crisis of the 3rd century started. So Rome did not get back its true self and became a republic again or whatever. So we don't actually know what Lucius does afterwards, because we don't know if he gives back power to the Senate or not. It is implied that maybe he does, but of course this is completely not fictional, completely ahistorical. And so we see the movie started out not so good in my opinion, then became good in around the half of the movie, and then it got a bit exaggerated in my opinion. You had all these scenes like Macrinus goes completely, he goes completely crazy. Like, why do you have to exaggerate everything so much? Why does everyone need to be a psychopath? And then Geta and Caracalla are psychopaths, and Caracalla is even more a psychopath, and they brutally murder Geta, and then Macrinus murders Caracalla, and like completely over the top stuff. In my opinion, it wouldn't have needed to be so exaggerated. And that the problem now with the story is because you have like so many conflicting things going on, it's all over the place. It's all over the place. Like, you think you understand the motivation of a certain character, and then it's like, oh no, I hate Rome, I want to destroy Rome, like Macrinus, because I was once a slave. Marcus Aurelius wasn't friendly to me. That's why I hate Rome, I want to destroy Rome, and I want to destroy everything. Oh wow, okay, that's your believable motivation. I don't know, man, that's like... And as I said in my spoiler-free review, the movie doesn't have a good musical score, doesn't have a good like atmosphere, in my opinion. Like I miss the atmosphere from the first one. It's ahistorical. It's really ahistorical, much more so than the first one. But it has some interesting characters. I liked Lucilla. I liked Acacius. I liked the first part of Macrinus before he went batshit crazy, okay? Because that to me feels not believable. That feels to me like, okay, we need stuff to go crazy now. Let's you know, turn Macrinus into a complete psychopath. Why? Because, I don't know, as a child, he had a tough time. He was a slave once. Wow. Okay? Really? You know? And the main character was kind of bland. I don't know. I missed kind of like the depth. Like Lucius, the character is not so interesting to me. I don't know how you feel, but to me he was not so interesting. Acacius I liked very much. Actually, it was an interesting character. And Geta in Caracalla was also kind of like, even though completely ahistorical, at least interestingly portrayed within this fictional universe. So, and the special effects were of course pretty good. You know, too much CGI, okay, too much eye candy, too much colors and eye-popping stuff. In my opinion, I don't like it so much. I like more the toned down version in the first one, where they use a lot of like filters also, like to establish a certain mood and atmosphere in certain scenes, which the second one doesn't do at all. It's like eye candy, popping colors, woo, 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 in your face, Avengers, you know, like a Marvel movie, completely like over the top colors everywhere. So, but if this movie, if some people see this movie and they at least get some kind of like interest into Roman history because of this movie, then I already applaud the movie, if that happens. For me, the first Gladiator kindled the interest for me in Roman history, and that's when I really started digging more into Roman history. So if the second movie manages to do that, then already I would say it's a plus to have this movie. I wish the movie was better, because I can see it had some strong points, especially towards the middle of the movie, where I would say if this would have been done better, this could have been a very good movie. This could have been a very good movie. But, you know, it was all over the place, and it had some other issues that I mentioned before as well. Lack of atmosphere, lack of good score, lack of good music, too weird plot, too many bizarre characters that are not believable, too many exaggerated animals that don't really exist, and effects, which unfortunately makes the movie, in my opinion, mediocre, painfully mediocre. And that is very painful because it's from Ridley Scott, the guy who made movies like Blade Runner and Alien 1, who are some of the best movies, in my opinion, ever made. I mean, not some, in my opinion, these are probably among the best movies ever made. If you look at the atmosphere and cinematography of Blade Runner 1, like this is like over 40 years later, and this movie is still like a masterpiece. An absolute masterpiece. Alien 1 as well. If you look at the atmosphere of Alien 1, wow! The atmosphere in this movie, this is one of the most intense atmospheres I have ever seen in any movie ever. And the world building and cinematography of Blade Runner 1 is one of the best ever, still, after all this time. And now this is very painful to see Ridley Scott, who had made these great movies in the past, and Gladiator 1 was of course also an amazing movie, and he had maybe a few others that I also liked. The Martian, I think, was also pretty good. And it's very painful to see what he's doing these days. Like, you see still it's shining through. His ability and his genius is still shining through at some points, but it's like he's trying too hard. He's trying to make more explosions, more insane stuff, more insane characters, more battle scenes, more brutal, like more violence. Everything has to be like upped, and I think more is not always better. So the movie is not as bad as you would think, You know, in the first third I thought like it's going to be a disaster, oh god. It's not as bad, and but unfortunately, like, it could have been much better. I would say it's painfully mediocre. Painfully mediocre. And it's like, yeah, some things are just not believable. Lucius being the son of Maximus feels like retconning to me, and Lucius, the main character, is not really so interesting in my opinion. And also, like, the relationship with other characters are not established so well in my opinion. Like, we see a lot of establishing of a relationship with his personal doctor, which I find pretty hilarious. Maybe the relationship to his personal doctor is actually established at least as well, if not better, than the relationship to his mother. So, you know, there are like strange things going on, and it's all over the place. So I'm sorry, but I wish I would have liked the movie more. But of course, since it's about Roman history, I still kind of like it, and I hope if someone sees it, at least it will kindle interest in Roman history. At least maybe that. But overall, I would say it's a painfully mediocre movie. So that's my spoiler-containing review of Gladiator 2. I'm sorry I rambled again. How long? Oh God, I'm rambling too much. That's my opinion. I'm sure many other people will have different opinions. I tried to be balanced. It's like the movie's not extremely bad. And it's also not extremely good. It's like it's mediocre. What can I say? It's painfully mediocre. So, you know, that's my opinion of the movie. I hope you liked this rambling. I hope you found this review kind of enjoyable. I certainly missed a few things. I didn't make any notes this time. It was just like without script. I was just thinking about stuff that popped into my mind from yesterday. So, you know, when I saw the movie. Anyways, yeah, thank you for watching the review. If you want to see the movie, great. Maybe you will find it more enjoyable than me. I hope you will. And at least it's good that there is a movie about Romans. You know, not always medieval setting. It's nice that at least there's another movie about the Romans, and maybe that's already these days all we can ask for, you know? I wish Hollywood would do a better job at historical accuracy, but maybe that's too much to ask, I don't know. Anyways, friends, I wish you a nice day. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video. Bye!